Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our first Ask Me Anything event. This has been jointly organized by IITM Foundation and IIT Mana Bay Area chapter. It's wonderful to see so many of you here already. Let me give you a little background about the event, but first I'd like to thank Rubrik for providing this facility for us, especially to Pradeep here, who has made this happen. Let me revise my opening comment. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So, a few months back, we were thinking about an event of this sort. There were some independent ideas at the foundation and at Mana about how to get prominent, well-known alumni to be able to reach out and meet with our alumni community. And this is a result of those thoughts and actions that were taken. We are looking forward to make this like a series, so as in we will have more people. So I'd like to welcome Pratap Subrahmanyam as our first Ask Me Anything speaker. Pratap started his career as a compiler developer at Hewlett-Packard, worked on code generation and optimizations for several versions of the PA RISC, and also a very early unreleased version of Itanium. At VMware, as part of the monitor team, Pratap helped with the development of the world's first virtualized multiprocessor software MMU. That's quite a mouthful. He worked with the Linux community on the standardized interface for paravirtualization. He implemented a prototype of multiprocessor virtual machine level fault tolerance and influenced Intel to implement the page modification log, known as PML, in the CPU. When Intel disclosed to VMware their plans for Optane persistent memory, he helped lead several efforts within VMware to make persistent memory easy to use from an ESX VM. More recently, Pratap has been exploring how FPGAs can help the applications run on vSphere, and Pratap will probably tell us more about what's vSphere, and also accelerate vSphere directly. Pratap received his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from IIT Madras in 1985 and a master's in computer science from the University of Buffalo. He holds 26 US patents. Let's give a nice round of applause. Moderating this event today is Girish MuckAI. Girish serves as the CEO of IITM Foundation, which is raising $100 million endowment for IIT Madras. Previously, he was a board member of MuckAI Foundation USA and Calico Center. For over 20 years, Girish has been working in AI ML, security, cloud, and networking areas in various leadership positions. He graduated from IIT Madras in 1990 and proudly claims he was from Alakananda Hostel. He also received a PhD from Boston University and an MBA from the Wharton School. He is our Alex Trebek for the evening, who will be asking all the questions here.
Without the other trouble. Alex.
Without the, it's not Alex trouble if that's what you meant to say. The format of this is we will have Girish and Pratap have a discussion for about 20-25 minutes. And then we'll open it up for audience questions. There are prizes for the 2 best audience questions. So pay attention to what they're talking and come up with questions that will really be helpful to everybody out here. And Pratap and Girish will decide who the winners of those prizes are. So that way they also get to have a say in the matter. So be nice.
Naveen, since we are a small crowd,
Yeah.
would there be time for everybody to introduce themselves?
Yeah, we'll do it. Let's let more people may be coming, so let's do it right before the Q&A.
Great idea. Awesome. Thank you, Naren. Hey, we are so delighted to have you, Pratap, here. That's better. So delighted to have you here.
got one.
Hello. So delighted to have you here.
Getting the echo on that.
There is an echo, something else is making.
Pratap, can you speak in your mic? Hello. Hello.
Yeah, just use that one.
Hello.
This one is not,
Let's try this one. Sorry. Sound much better. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So delighted to have you here, Pratap. And again, as Naren said, we really want to have people that have accomplished, or alumni that have accomplished tremendously, right? Done so well in their lives, and contributed very heavily to various areas. And they share with us their journey. In all of these journeys, we find a lot of success, but they also had difficult moments or choices to be made and all that. And people that inspire them along the way, and we want to hear that. And I think hopefully it inspires all of us, to do more and do far more than what we can and what we have done so far. That's kind of the idea. So with that in mind, Pratap, thank you for joining us. And I want to kind of start off by asking you journey from IIT days. The day you went into IIT, how was it? What did you do? Who did you come along the way that made an impression on you? People that helped you along the way, that you helped. Would love to hear that, starting with that, and then we'll go to VMware after that. So please.
Okay. So my earliest, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My earliest memories of IIT were, I'm sitting in CLT, selecting my program that I'm going to be doing in IIT. Like, it's all based on your rank and things like that. And, I was adamant that I wanted to leave Chennai.
leave Chennai.
Yeah, I wanted to go to any other IIT other than IIT Madras. And my dad is a faculty member at IIT Madras. So I grew up running around in the chemistry department. I would hide underneath the beakers and things like that when I was a kid. I went to Vanavani High School and things like that. So I wanted to go anywhere other than IIT Madras. And my mother sent my dad with me, with explicit instructions, make sure he doesn't choose anything but IIT Madras. So you can imagine, I'm a parent at this same age as my dad was at that time, I guess now. I can tell you, I would not have the guts to do that with my kids. He came, he sat next to me, he made sure that I took IIT Madras. That was my earliest memory of IIT Madras, the first entrance at CLT. And subsequently, there have been some interesting times at IIT. Other than the usual sort of trips to Tarams and Belach and all that stuff, I think IIT definitely taught me my limits, is the way I would put it. There are various kinds of teachers you meet in your life. Some people, will boost you to the next level. Some people will tell you exactly what level you are in, And there was this professor called Balki, the physics guy, and he's by far the best teacher I've ever met in physics. And coming into IIT, I was, already sort of adoring Feynman's lectures of physics and things like that. And he gave me my first C, and I didn't quite accept it. Next semester also I got a C. At that point, you start realizing that maybe this is not my cup of tea. And I've always realized this, that the strong teachers actually teach you where you belong. And they do it unashamedly. They're secure enough to tell you that you're not this and you're not that. I think it's important in life to meet those people early in your life, so that you know what to do. I've since then been a physics hobbyist. Thank God I didn't turn it into my profession. Probably for the right reasons. And then computer science was actually far easier. So that was my sort of a very big memory there. IIT also, taught me a lot of things. They made it very difficult for me to do anything in computer science, being from mechanical engineering. You couldn't even get into the computer center because in my batch we didn't actually have undergraduate computer science. I think Sundar's batch was the first one with computer science, and so it was a it was a great honor to even be let into the computer center. We would get 300 computer cards, every semester or something like that. And you imagine, if you finish your 300 computer cards, which those damn punching machines would finish for you, by just punching it wrongly and things like that. And then the next would be eaten by the IBM System 370 card reader inside. And that'll chew up the cards for you, and then you'd be like, next day morning will come and be like, I didn't make that mistake, but the computer read it wrongly. And so those kinds of things, IT definitely made getting things done not easy. There was a lot of process protocol and things like that, but it teaches you how to kind of work the system. It teaches you how to persevere, and then everything else in life after that is actually remarkably easier. So I think overall I had an absolute blast in IT. Some of the professors I met there, Professor Vijay Raghavan, we were actually good friends. He would come over to Narmada Hostel at 11 o'clock at night, and he would sit outside, and he'd bring a cognac bottle with me. So we would actually sit there and we were talking about fluid dynamics and things like that. There were professors who were like remarkably good. And so overall, I had a very good time. It was a time when I branched out. I learned a number of new things. Coming into IIT was very focused on just science and just the physics, math, chemistry kind of thing. But in IIT, I was like a kid in a candy shop. I would learn everything. I would learn electronics. I would learn, VLSI design. I would learn computer science. I would learn all kinds of things, graph theory. And I took all kinds of weird courses that were unrelated to mechanical engineering. And I just had a good fun. And then I decided 4 years of branching out was good enough. And when I came out to do my grad studies, I started focusing again. And ever since then, it's been more and more narrow.
So then, any other classmates or seniors in your hostel, were they very influential? Plus, you had a thing that you were a professor's son, right? So there was that. Did that help? Was that like a?
No, my dad was actually very good at this. He basically checked out of my life. Nobody even knew that I was his son. He never visited me in the hostel. There was nobody knew that I was his son.
Your dad must have upset that professor who gave you C's.
No,
Otherwise, why
really.
did he, knowing you're a professor's son, he gave you C's?
Yeah, it happens, I deserved it. So, I think there were a lot of people in my batch and in my hostel itself who were like, who turned out to be very, very big luminaries. And even in those days, they demonstrated signs of sort of greatness. So you can just observe them and actually learn a lot of stuff. But in that phase of my life, I was actually not interested in learning from any of my peers, so to speak.
Awesome. So how about at State University of New York, Buffalo? How did that transition go for you?
Yeah, SUNY Buffalo was, I wanted to do computer science, and it was one of the schools that actually offered me a position to do computer science. I really did not want to do mechanical engineering. And I did, I got into Buffalo, and it was just smooth. There was no real highlights or lowlights there. It was just another master's, learned a bunch of stuff, got enough credentials to go get a job kind of thing. I never wanted to do a PhD. That was just not my cup of tea. I guess the truth of the matter is I watched my dad do his PhD, and there's a substantial amount of politics when it comes to academia. And I grew up hearing all of that stuff, so I said, I really don't need to do a PhD. And there was enough money without doing a PhD, so I didn't really need it for any reasons. I got a pretty good job in Boston after that, and I stayed there and moved on to HP after that and so on. So I've never looked back.
Awesome. So a little bit on HP, did that sort of shape you to become ready for VMware, and then if you can spend some time on, what made you join VMware? It was very early time, right?
Yeah.
Virtualization was something that nobody knew at that time.
Yeah.
And what kind of got you there, and what was the reason?
HP is an amazing place. Was an amazing place in those days.
I remember graduating out of Buffalo. There used to be this ad on TV where this guy would go to the shower, and suddenly he would run out of the shower, and then there'll be the sign that says water. Right? So the whole thing, and then it's a Hewlett Packard where engineers belong or something like that. Right? So, and it is truly an engineer's company, where people thought about good, strong technical problems, and they came up with good products. The HP calculator was like a phenomenal product. It was the pride and joy of the company. Their oscilloscopes, they were very high precision instruments. And so to me, I was always a hacker. I was always building things. I was always making stuff. So to me, that value proposition was very exciting. And I gave up a whole bunch of East Coast opportunities and found my way to HP here. And the company just taught me a tremendous amount in software engineering. Their processes, their code reviews, the way they treated people in their evaluations and promotions and things of that nature. Till date in VMware, we follow all those things. We look for people who review make sure they don't check in stuff without code reviews. No matter how high level you are, if you find yourself checking in code, you get criticized. So all these things I learned back at HP. Just the process of software engineering is not trivial. Building software is actually very difficult. After some point, once the number of lines of code exceeds few thousands, it's impossible for anyone to keep it all in their heads. And the dependencies get very, very complicated. And it's made worse nowadays with this whole notion of agile programming, where there's more emphasis on velocity of code development and less emphasis on planning and methodologies and thoughtfulness. So you just generate a whole bunch of code, and then very soon you're like, oh my God, I don't know what these things do. So you end up rewriting it in a new language. I learned a lot at HP in just software methodology, and then also people management, or interacting with people. I was very young, and then I made a number of mistakes. Perhaps my own sort of personality style, maybe my brashness, etc. And HP taught me good lessons there as to how to deal with people. I think that was very valuable too. I've never forgotten those lessons. At VMware, I tried my best to behave better.
So what made you go to VMware?
Right. So towards my, and I was at HP for about 13 and a half years. And all the time in the compiler lab. And mostly working on sort of low-level compiler optimizations and so on. And towards the last few years, I'd started writing things that are called binary translators. What that means is that in those days, we used to have many, many different kinds of processors. We used to have the x86 processor like we have today, and the ARM like we have today. But we also used to have the 68K from Motorola. We used to have the MIPS R2000 series and 3000 series. And we used to have the PA-RISC. We used to have the Alpha from DEC, and so on. There's a lot of different processors. And they were all competing as to who's going to win out. Like there was Intel's Itanium, which is a VLIW processor, and so on. So everybody sort of developed their own processor, which means they developed their own compilers, their own operating systems. The whole stack was unique in each of those cases. That is those days. And now it's clear who has won. x86 was the dominant dog. Right? But in those days, that was not clear. And so there was this market for people to write software that would take a binary that's compiled for one software, one hardware stack, and just automatically run it in another hardware. So there was a market for taking an error out or an executable file that was compiled for, say, Alpha, and run it on the x86 without recompilation. Right? This is an interesting technology problem, and I wasn't really thinking in those days about how to make money out of it or anything of that nature. To me, a technical problem was significantly more important. Right? So, and that's also a HP thing. It's like, you work for the technology as opposed to the money. And it turned out that it's a very hard problem to get right. And doing that translation, which is called binary translation, no matter how well you do it, the performance impact was noticeable. The application would run 10, 20, maybe even 3x, 5x slower sometimes. It was really hard to make it run at the same speed as it was originally compiled for. And so I was struggling with that for a while, and I knew that problem inside and out, and I knew where the time was going and all that stuff. And then I noticed that there was this, once a friend of mine sent me a small CD. It was literally a credit card size CD. And he said, install this thing called virtual machines, play around with it, tell me what you think. And I installed it, and in those days I had a Linux host, and I installed Windows inside a virtual machine. And for the first time I actually saw Windows boot inside a virtual machine. And the baby flag icon coming and the little brick going in the bottom. And it was amazing. It was like a jaw-dropping experience because this thing was actually running at almost native speed. And I knew it was a translation of some sorts. I don't know exactly how they did it, but it was a translation of some sorts. It was taking one image and running it on another image. In this case, it was an operating system translation. And so I was amazed at how fast it actually worked. The virtual machine was literally booting at native speed. So I knew I'd missed something, somewhere along the way I'd not caught on to something, right? So I worked hard in trying to figure out how they did it. And I thought I had a sketch in my mind as to how the product worked. And then I contacted them. I said, I want to come and talk to you. And that's when it all started. They called me in for an interview. And then, I learned more about how their product worked at the time, and I really wanted to join the company at that point in time. And then they called me in another time. And I think this was sometime in Christmas or Thanksgiving of 1999. And I quit at the turn of the year. I joined in February.
That's a big leap of faith at that time.
Yeah, and I joined pretty much because I loved the technology. I love the way they solved the problem. I love the fact that I couldn't solve it myself, and I hadn't seen it all, and they had seen it, and they had implemented a solution that actually worked, and I couldn't do it myself. And so I went there to say, I want to learn how they figured it out. So, during the interview, I also met with practically everybody in the company at that time. And they were remarkably intelligent.
60th employee or something.
I was 23, yeah.
23, okay, 23, wow.
Yeah, and they're remarkably smart guys, and it was just an enjoyable experience talking to all those people. And I was the only non-Stanford pedigree person at that time. So it was also unique, And,
IIT Madras.
Right. There's not much IIT Madras. Yeah, there was already one IIT Madras, maybe not. That was the first one. I don't know quite for sure. Ben Verghese was there, but I think he joined a little later. But when Ben had done his PhD under Mendel Rosenblum, so Mendel knew about them. So it was a very enjoyable experience interviewing at VMware. So I said, this is a place I want to commit to. And it was a tiny company, and remember in the 2000s, who went and joined an operating systems company? Okay, that's like the most career-limiting move you can ever make. You went and joined Webvan, or you went and joined Pets.com. I'm not kidding you. These companies were the companies to go work for, and literally people were going IPO, every 8 months, and their valuation stock was at 700 or something like that, right, within 2 days. And they were instant millionaires, and we were like working on operating system stuff. Like no one really knew what we did. They didn't even understand what a virtual machine was. Half the time they would think we were building Java virtual machines. It was such a difficult sell. They just didn't understand what we were doing at all. And it was always a complicated explanation. Oh, by the way, we do this thing called virtualization. No one really understood what virtualization was. So it was not a very easy thing. But it's surprisingly worked out. Put it that way.
Yeah. So VMware Fellow is the highest technical achievement you can ever have, right? So Pratap, what did you do, and how did you kind of get there? Was that something that you planned for, or is it that you just put your head down and worked and you got there?
So first of all, the VMware Fellow title is not something there's a path to. There isn't a rubric, that is, if you do these things, you become a fellow kind of thing. It is an appointment made by the CEO. Presumably, you could make an appointment to make me not a fellow tomorrow. Right? It is a political appointment in that sense. Perhaps the reason I'm a fellow is because I persisted in doing multiple things that HP has taught me, but inside VMware, more successfully at VMware than at HP itself. But I learned the lessons at HP. I had my failings there, and then I went and did the same things at VMware, but then VMware environment was just a lot more conducive for that kind of work, and I succeeded better here. And I think what they look for at a fellow level is, do you put your neck out sufficiently enough and take a bold risk periodically and have multiple such risks under your belt over a period of time? And do you have sufficient credibility that people will follow you when you do it the next time? You guide people the right way and things like that. So it's a very subjective call, I would say.
Very cool. So why don't we take some questions from the audience? And then, so please, don't hesitate. You don't need to have virtual questions, but real questions.
It'll be good if audience members come here to say a question. And one request is to keep your question to about 30 seconds so that Pratap can give a longer answer that way. And then if there's more time, we'll go second round of questions. So who wants to be the first?
It may be a good time to introduce yourself too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Arjun Rangarajan, class of 2002. My question for you is about what do you think of the Valley? I mean, the Silicon Valley, back when Silicon was still in the Silicon Valley, and in terms of what's going on now, obviously economically we're doing very well, but in terms of innovation, do you think the innovative spirit is still in the Valley, or how would you contrast today's Valley versus how you've seen it over the past several years?
Right, I mean, I'm an irrational optimist. Okay, that's how I've lived my life. Oftentimes saying things that are ludicrous. But I think Silicon Valley still has its charm. It's a really, really powerful place. You meet some phenomenal people here. So even though I think the capital may have moved elsewhere over time, I think Silicon Valley still generates a phenomenal amount of innovation and capital. In not just one or two companies, but it's like hundreds of companies here that are doing great work and making really severe impact. Take Rubrik itself. I mean, I was just saying, the last thing you want as a photographer, to be asked to do is to go take the picture of the Grand Canyon. If someone were to charter you to go take a picture of the Grand Canyon, that's like the career-ending move, because how can you possibly distinguish yourself? That Grand Canyon has been photographed tens of thousands of times. Every angle has been photographed at least 14 times already. How would you distinguish yourself? Right? And so, but the Silicon Valley continues to keep producing companies that constantly distinguish themselves. It doesn't come just because. It comes because there's like a whole bunch of people who are thinking differently all the time, who are taking risks, who are passionate about what they do. And it's very difficult to find that anywhere else, I think. It's a cultural thing.
Hi Pratap, thank you. Mohini Chakravarti, class of 93, EC. So I wanted to pull on the thread that you set up on software development and Agile, and now we have AI, so self-building code and self-trained machines and synthetic data. And so clearly software is really powerful and open source is present. It's a global phenomenon, so you don't really know who has written what, and there's pieced together code everywhere. What do you think about that? Meaning there's a good and the bad of it. So what are your views in general about how software gets developed now?
Is your question specifically about what I think about open source or?
No, in general, software development, I think Agile
Yeah.
and open source are sort of related concepts, because now you're not really writing code, you're actually plugging
Yeah,
pieces of code together,
yeah.
right? And so, just comment.
So let me get more specific and just answer about maybe agile methodologies and open source.
Yeah.
So first of all, open source, right? I mean, back in the day when I actually went to VMware, open source was not that very big. Linux was probably the most prominent open source software, and then there was Emacs and things of that nature. But not really a whole bunch of other useful open source programs at all. And it is still a very a toy experiment. Even Linux was not very popular. But I think single-handedly, I mean, open source has just kind of changed the way we think about software development entirely. Now, fast forward 20 years, and there's so much that's available in open source that you can build many, many things with just completely free software. Gone are the days where you would buy a laptop and then you would also buy like a stack of floppy disks and start installing one by one all the software. Those days are not completely gone. And it sort of hit me when I was teaching my daughters how to program. And the whole thing, I mean, she developed a whole iPhone stack, an iPhone application, and didn't purchase a single piece of software. Everything was freely available. Stack Exchange is a phenomenal place. What open source also did is, made knowledge, the distance between you and knowledge was just tremendously reduced. Gone are the days where you had to take a bus and go to the British Council and kind of sit there and read a book. You just go to a laptop and you open up and you type some words and then knowledge just sprouts out of it and shoots you in the face, So the distance between you and knowledge has gone down tremendously. Distance to comprehension, I don't think has gone down, right? But knowledge has come very close, right? So I think open source has done that to a large extent. People can build massive and complicated pieces of software today at a very young age because of open source. Now, along with that, I think the time it takes to develop something has also reduced. And with that, the fever to build more and more has gone up. And I think as a result, the thoughtfulness that's needed into building good quality, stable enterprise level software, the desire for that has gone down. There is more emphasis placed on developing something quick and getting it out and taking feedback and then developing again and then going and taking some more feedback. That algorithm existed even back in the day, except the cycle time has gone down so much that people are, the art of building that MVP, determining what your MVP should be, that's turned into, what can I do in the next 3 months? That's my MVP. That was never the case before. You would actually think through, what is an MVP? What would you do an MVP? And if it took you 16 months to get to that MVP, you would invest 16 months. But not anymore nowadays. Everybody's deciding, like, what are you doing for the next 3 months? And so the long-term thinking, or even the medium-term thinking, that skill that you need to actually develop in you is being sort of cut off to some extent. And I think that's a mistake. It's a very big mistake because, a successful hospital has both ER doctors and also that doctor who does the brain surgery. That brain surgeon guy will probably look at 3 or 4 X-ray images of your brain and then find that one path, to get to the tumor. But it'll take him a month to actually come up with that path. He can't do that at the speed of the ER doctor. But the ER doctor shouldn't also be expected to do brain surgery. They're 2 different skills. And I think we emphasize a lot on the ER doctor style of work nowadays. Everything has to be done quickly, and then you go and get feedback, and It doesn't matter whether they like it or not, we just get feedback and we improve it kind of thing. There's a lot of emphasis on that cycle time as opposed to doing the job right in a thoughtful manner. I think that's my 2 cents.
No, thank you.
Cool. Just speaking of doctors, I was just this weekend thinking about a couple of things. You know, the most popular doctors are pathologists because people are always dying to go to them. And the nicest doctors are dermatologists because they never get under anybody's skin. The last one, sorry, this one was original as well. Is, the people that do the most thorough job, doctors, are actually proctologists because they rarely do a half-ass job. Sorry, it's just a distraction.
I have no idea what to say.
just kidding. Pratap, please.
Hi Pratap, I'm Mrinal, class of 2008. And one thing which Girish mentioned when he was introducing you was how something you did influenced Intel to do, change their direction of doing things. When was the first time you came to such a position where a decision you took convinced others to focus their efforts to get follow your vision? And how did you lead up to that?
Okay, so I mean, that's a complicated question. First of all, I don't want you to think that I have any control over what Intel does.
I know,
Right,
still,
so,
but
I mean,
still, they have their own things to do and get.
Yeah, they do what they want to do and we sort of tag along and kind of play along. But anyway, if you take a step back, in 2000 when we built this thing called a virtual machine monitor, which basically is a piece of software that arrests the execution of all threads that belong to that virtual machine so that they don't stray away and start inspecting other virtual machine threads. That's why it's called a monitor, because it monitors everything that's running inside the virtual machine. When we implemented this, it was completely software, right? So, and that's where the MMU and all of that stuff come into play. And, it had a performance impact. It had about 20-30% performance impact. Virtual machines, when they run, it will be slower. And initially, Intel gave us no attention at all. To them, we didn't matter. And then around 2003, 2004, we started getting bigger. We were running more stuff in virtual machines, and they started hearing about us, and they started paying attention. And then along came, we started getting good enough that we were actually being used in the enterprise for mission-critical applications, like people who run Microsoft Exchange in a virtual machine, which is not what Intel expected, right? And at this point in time, they looked at the technology and said, well, we should be doing this in hardware ourselves. Why is this piece of software a software? Why shouldn't it be in the processor? And so the first thing they did was they started a project inside Intel that actually did what are called virtualization extensions to the x86 architecture. This is called VT, and then EPT, and so on. And they did all of that stuff inside Intel. But to a large extent, that was done because VMware actually showed the way and said that that problem is an interesting problem to solve. And that virtualization built in software itself can have such a huge impact that if you did it in hardware, it would only have more impact. So in a sense, we actually influenced Intel to go down that path of actually implementing all these extensions into hardware. And towards the end of that development process, they worked very closely with VMware to actually make it all happen.
So was it Pat Gelsinger already had
No.
come at that time?
This was back in 2005, 2007. So this was way early.
Before that.
Yeah. So that was step number one. And remember, when you write something in software and you run all these applications and they're running slow, we used to have lots of people inside VMware who would just analyze performance of these applications. So there was a time when you could come to me and say, what is a bottleneck in Microsoft Exchange? And I could tell you exactly where the time is being spent. Or some other bigger application. Because I've observed all of that code running from underneath the virtual machine model. Because I have the software that's actually running all of that code. So I could tell you where the time is going. And when you're at that level, you make observations about what would you do differently if you actually had more control of what the processor did. Like, how could you improve the x86 processor yourself if you had that, that freedom, which we didn't. But I made a lot of little notes to say, I wouldn't do the TLB this way, or I wouldn't do the MMU this way, or I would do this or that differently, and so on. So there was a long list of those little things that I thought I could do if I had the opportunity. And then later on, past 2007, when our relationship between VMware and Intel was much more strong, and they had already implemented their virtualization extensions, and they would have very frequent conversations with us. At that point in time, VMware was off looking at something called fault tolerance. And I was leading that team where basically the concept is very simple. Virtualization was all about putting one single virtual machine. But if that virtual machine, you're running Microsoft Exchange on it, it just dies on you. Let's say it crashes or the host dies on you. Well, all that stuff is gone. It's lost. What we came up with was a way to replicate the state of the virtual machine while it's running onto another host. Okay, so if it wasn't super sexy to see one virtual machine boot, you can actually see two virtual machines running in lockstep now. Okay, so you don't even see this other virtual machine; it's off in the cloud somewhere, right? So we figured out how to transfer the data. Like 200 times a second, we would take snapshots of the virtual machine and send it over to the wire to the other side. This was a phenomenal science fiction kind of experiment we did inside VMware. And in order to make this happen, there were some things I wanted from the x86. And the relationship between VMware and Intel was good enough at that time that I could establish those connections and say, hey guys, why would you want to do this? Or why don't you want to do that? And with that came what is called the page modification log, which is now a data structure inside the x86 processor itself. It's been there for about 10 years now. And it gives you fine-grained data about what pages have changed where, which is helpful in something like an FD, fault tolerance. So that's how we've influenced the Intel processor. But now our relationship is even deeper. We actually share roadmaps with each other, and we kind of make sure we're aligned. We do many common projects together and so on.
Cool, thank you. Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Is it on now? Okay.
You should push it up. Yeah.
Hello.
Towards
Hello.
you. Yeah.
Is it?
Speak. It should come.
Okay. So I'm Suhas. I'm a 2016 Alum, and you talked a lot about and experienced the redundancy and the inefficiencies of having like multiple architectures and many competing companies and so on. And also you've experienced the copyleft and the OSX revolution that she also asked about. Moving on from that, there's a lot of talk these days about future of capitalism and how to change things to be better. So what I think about a lot is how we might help innovation occur more frequently. Because the way it happens right now, the company might have trade secrets. So trade secrets are especially non-conducive to innovation. So would you say that having a copyleft sort of monopoly is better? Or is there a way of thinking about stuff like that?
You need the cognac one.
Good point.
Honestly, there was a time when we didn't know what another company software stack even did. I mean, you could be a fabulous compiler engineer and you would not know what the alpha compiler did, or the DEC compiler did, or the HP compiler did, unless you were part of their team. No one really shared any knowledge at all, unless it was published in some peer-reviewed conference and so on. Even then, they will dumb it down so that it's not, it doesn't give away some secrets and stuff like that. Things all changed when GNU compiler came out, and everything got implemented on GNU compiler after that. They put the entire compiler industry out of business. So yeah, I mean, sharing knowledge, I think, only makes more knowledge available. I don't think it kills many things. I mean, some things will get killed, but new things will sprout up. So if you think about it, yeah, sure, my first 13 years writing compilers, I lost my job to some extent with GNU compilers. But, there are other things to do, and you move on, right? So you don't looking at one thing and saying, because of all this protection knowledge and stuff like that. But the other flip end of this thing is like, you don't want to have too much openness, because in the end, you have to differentiate. And there should be sufficient room for differentiation. As long as there's sufficient room for differentiation and for you to put roots and make impact, everything else can be open, I think. But if you go to the extent of saying everything is communal and, there is no privacy at all, that might work, because I think in the end, like I said, knowledge is only knowledge, it's what you do with it that makes impact. So you're basically saying, unless you're super smart, okay, all the other people can make no impact, only the smart people will make impact. I think it's a very difficult proposition. First of all, it makes a lot of people seem stupid. And the second thing is it makes smart people get super stressed. I'm not so sure that's a conducive environment. There has to be some privacy. There has to be some, isolation and things like that for a period of time. Every company, I think, has to be secretive for some amount of time before they go out and say what they're doing or what their IP is and stuff like that. I can't imagine a world in which everything is open all the time. It's just very difficult for me to imagine that. But then, I remember a trip going to Death Valley, 25 years ago, and someone asked me, what do you think of this guy, Richard Stallman, and, Free Software Foundation? I said, that's just never going to happen. There's no way in hell software will become open source, and that's completely wrong. Maybe you're right, maybe I'm wrong. This seems impractical. So.
Great question and response, yeah. That's very thorough.
Hey, Munishi, 1970. What do you think of the IIT Madras and IIT Madras Research Park skill levels in terms of being able to do some of the stuff that is being done in Silicon Valley? Or is it that only the back-end routine work is only going to be outsourced back to India?
Is that a question about the present or the past?
So well, today.
Today.
Because, some years ago I had asked Prabhakar Radhavan, and he said, they just don't have the skills that we need here. I said, where do you think you came from? I came from IIT Madras. So I'm saying, where do you think they're at right now?
I think if you're asking a rhetorical question, you get a different answer, right? I think the truth is that of recent, in IIT Research Park and maybe even other startups, I am starting to see people doing projects that are fairly cutting edge, right? But the truth of the matter is I can still, even today, go to IIT Madras and I don't find the kind of systems courses being taught there as it's being taught in even an ordinary college here. Okay. I get taught graph theory and I get taught complexity theory and stuff like that, really no one cares. But I don't get taught hardcore operating system stuff or compiler theory and things like that, right? So yes, there is a difference in both education and also in sort of what actually happens, startups there and so on. So there is a difference. I don't think you can diminish that. However, they've come a long way in even 20, 25 years. Whether they will catch up to Silicon Valley, I think that distance is still very noticeable. In fact, I would say China has just taken off. You just have to see some of the cities in China and how much work they're doing in hardware and logic synthesis and RTL coding and Verilog. It's just taking off like crazy. We have a lot of work to do, if you ask me. Not just in IIT Research Park, but in the rest of the space too. But nevertheless, I think there's phenomenal talent there, lots of dedicated people. But a lot of us have very chameleonic personalities. We all learn from another person. We mold ourselves based on who we see next to us and things of that nature. You could be a very smart person, and if you're alone, or if you're not surrounded by similar people who will compel you to think bigger, compel you to take risks and so on, very highly likely you won't take a risk. And I think that environment, takes a while to build. That's why certain companies succeed and certain companies fail. It's because of an environment that doesn't exist there for that risk-taking and so on. And I would say that that environment still is not readily available out there. See, here you can throw a dart and find yourself a good risk-taking, challenging company, but there that's not the case. So that doesn't mean that they're not doing the right thing. It's just that they're quite a bit behind.
Lovely.
Hi, this is Sundar. I'm from the 1986 batch. And so question for you, Pratap, thinking back about 19, 20 years ago when you were just leaving HP and joining VMware, what's the advice you would give to that person who's doing that?
Go with the people. I honestly will tell you that I had 2 days of interviews at VMware, and after the first day, I was praying that they would give me a job. Literally because, first of all, I like the technology. It was something that I had tried and failed, or only had partial success in, and they had done it good. Everybody whom I talked to, I really loved. I wanted to work with all those people. And the thing with any startup is that there'll be many pivots. The idea that you started out with will not be the idea that you go out IPO with. So if you marry yourself to an idea or a technology exclusively, then you will find yourself disenfranchised after a while. But if you marry yourself to the people, you'll go with them, wherever they go. It's very important, I think, in life to find the group of people who you admire and who similarly admire you, and stick to that as much as possible. And I think for me, it was lucky that I found that group of people. I think it's completely luck. It's not like I would be sitting here and saying I deserve this or anything like that. The fact that someone sent me that CD to do the thing, and I was an alpha, I actually was in that alpha program. I was doing QE for VMware while at HP. All that is just fortuitous. But in the end, I took a risk. I still remember when I decided to quit HP, I started to interview, and I went from HP Compiler Lab to there was a Sun Labs in Redwood City that gave me a job, and they gave me a 20% raise and more stock. And so financially, that would have been just the right thing to do. And Sun stock was at 110 in those days. Okay. And in contrast, that very evening, I got an offer from VMware for a 20% pay cut. Okay. And I didn't even know what to make out of their stock offer because it was just a piece of paper. And I had a 4-year-old kid at home, and my second one was 6 months old. You go after what you think is right. To me, VMware felt right because I looked at the people and I said, look, if these guys are going to fail, I probably should fail with them, And Sun was just another compiler job. There was no change for me. It was an HP compiler job to Sun compiler job. So I took a risk and went to VMware, is how I would say it. I just placed my gut and said, look, I would enjoy working with them. I would be happy working with them every day. And from there, good things will come. Technology was definitely, in my opinion, very good, although no one else knew anything about it. From my opinion, it was good because I'd done an alternate implementation at HP, and I knew how bad that was, like a 5x slowdown to a 20% slowdown. That's a huge improvement. So I told myself, if I joined a company with just 20% slowdown, I can help them become 10% slowdown. And that's good enough for people to say it's just native performance. So that was a trade-off that I made. So, and remember, back in those days, very soon after we made any splash at all and became noticed in the Linux community, someone came up with an open source hypervisor. Okay, in 2003 itself, there was an open source hypervisor, and immediately everyone like, that's the death of VMware. We were just 4 years old at that time, and we didn't go IPO like all the other .com guys did. And early 2000, there was a .com crash, so there was no hope of us going IPO too after that. So who would fund us, there's just a phenomenal amount of uncertainty. I can tell you there are many times that I've driven back on Foothill Boulevard thinking that was my last month, at VMware. So, there's unpredictabilities, but in the end you have to trust yourself and say if thing goes well in VMware, you find another job. That's always there. It's not the end of the world.
Ditching Sun for cloud gets you to cloud 9.
Apollo, class of 1990, EC, Saras, number 1. But question on AI ML. So there are people like Girish who's so much in love with AI ML that has changed his name to MuckAI, right? But then our Saras 90 WhatsApp group, we routinely make fun of a colleague who keeps on selling AI ML companies like, oh, he's scamming. How does he do it, right? Or even at VMware Radio, right? After 4 or 5 AI ML presentations, there's eyes rolling, oh, yet another one. But I'm sure some of it works. So what's your view on areas where you think AI ML would really work versus hype?
So, I was having dinner in one of the Stanford gatherings, maybe 3 years ago or something like that. And comes and sits with me, next to me is a guy called Donald Knuth. Okay. And he has a paper in his hand, which was written by the Berkeley guys, and they had figured out a neural net that could predict earthquakes. Okay. What these guys had done was they had collected data from the last 120 years on the geological movement inside in this area, and they built a neural net, and that thing could predict the next one, like obscene high percentage or something. And remember, Knuth has written 3 volumes of hardcore mathematics. Okay, the guy is not a joke when it comes to mathematics. In fact, I think one of his books is all about hashing algorithms. And his point was he didn't understand that paper. He was just looking at the paper, and I don't understand how it works. That's scary, right? When you put explainability of a system out of reach for even that highest echelon of mental acuity, you're just demonstrating how we're all stupid. That's very, very scary, right? But not all hope is lost. I think there's actual research happening on explainability with AI, and people are coming up with techniques to actually prove that our neural net actually does what it's supposed to do, as opposed to something else, and that there is no hidden backdoors inside the neural net, and so on and so forth. Because next thing they'll get hacked is a neural net tomorrow, right? All you got to do is subtly change one of the weights, and then it'll start behaving differently, except in very rare occurrences when you cannot even predict that it's going to do that, and so on. Right? It's not an easy situation. I think that there will be some areas where AI and ML will completely shine in safe areas. Okay. And then there will be some areas in which it will be a very close assistant to us, in a sense. But that's just my take. There are lots of things that we do today that we sort of pat ourselves in the back and say that's makes me an expert, but that's actually dangerous. I think that's when anytime you do a repetitive job, that's automatable, and it's very easy to produce that sort of hashing function that will outdo you in a sense. Even though you may not understand how it works, it still works, and that's sellable to some extent. A lot of people will buy it. So there isn't, there's hype in the sense that no one understands the technology behind it today, I think. It's not well understood, but it still works. So there's a lot of people out there trying to figure out how to apply it to every little discipline possible. And, statistics is not even a word that's uttered anymore. It's data scientists and, things of that nature. I think you just have to see how it plays out. I think if you go 5 years out, you could have legal and law come into play too, where we need to learn how to legitimize the behavior of these neural networks. There's got to be laws against that, right?
There you go.
You know,
Yeah.
there has to be some way to audit whether a neural net is an accepted neural net, right? For instance, what makes a Tesla's navigation system worthy for the road? Only Tesla validates that neural net today. But maybe that's not the way it should be done in the future. Maybe there's got to be a more standard benchmark that you should be able to pass, or some validation technique that you need to pass before the California state can actually allow that neural net to actually drive a car on its streets. And maybe the European guys will come up with their own benchmark. Okay? You have to put some sort of legislation around these things over time. I think otherwise it will be very difficult to legislate any of these things or keep it from becoming very chaotic. But I do agree with you. Everybody's on the bandwagon. You know, everything has an ML quotient to it. But that's probably a good thing. You know, every so often we need to create a new platform for sometimes doing the same things. You know, we were doing statistics before, and then we created a new platform, I think, with more organized data and more data science and so on. It's just a new platform with new nouns and new verbs to communicate and discuss with each other. But then with that new powerful language and new platform, we come up with some new ideas. So it's a good thing. It's very, very young still. And honestly, I think maybe Google and Facebook have done a little bit of disservice to this whole space by trying to make it seem like recognizing cat photos is a cool thing to do. That's not what AI and ML really is about. And there's a lot more to it.
Question?
One more question for you. This is with another thing you were mentioning about your binary translation days, right? You're back into another time where there's an explosion of architectures, so many new designs being coming out every single day from the same company sometimes. So how is so I can imagine now a single CPU being fitted with an FPGA, with a GPU, with a cryptography accelerator, with another accelerator, and something for AI, something else. How is VMware, how is it responding to this? Because you have to virtualize everything now, right? Because everything is going to go to the cloud. And then I'll be one guy saying, I just want half of a CPU, 24 accelerators, give me that. Someone will say, give me that, and add cryptography to encrypt the whole thing. And are these some of the challenges you're looking at right now, or is it something else which worries you today?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
So the proliferation of different kinds of compute units is a trend that's been going on for about half a decade now. It started with the GPUs and FPGAs, and then AI ML came about and actually introduced the need for specialized processors that will optimize specialized things. And the cloud guys definitely leaped on it and took it out to a new level entirely. And so yes, all of these devices need to be virtualized. Okay. Perhaps not entirely. Okay. Perhaps we could virtualize it slightly differently than we virtualize the processor, the main processor. So that is something that we're looking at. In addition to looking at that kind of work, we're also looking at taking those accelerators and accelerating the infrastructure itself. That is the virtualization platform itself. So we are doing both those things. We are trying to cope with the proliferation of these acceleration units. Plus, we're trying to consume that to accelerate our own infrastructure. So yeah, there is a definite move towards adding more hardware DNA into VMware.
Naren Naik, class of 1979. I have a question. We've been hearing primarily about technology-related questions, so I want to know a little bit about Pratap, the person. So maybe you can learn a little bit about that. If you tell us a favorite book, a favorite movie, and a favorite artist or art form.
Favorite book, a movie, and
Artist or art form, dance, music.
okay.
So, just a little bit about myself. I have 2 daughters. The older one is almost 22 now. The younger one is a little past 19. They're both off in college, doing their own thing. And I have receded from my parenting responsibilities significantly. Right? My favorite book, it's called Golden Gate by Vikram Seth. I don't know whether you guys are familiar with it, but Vikram Seth is a Bengali writer who came to do his PhD at Stanford. And there's this thesis, he wrote that book. And I highly encourage you guys to read it because he wrote it as a big poem. The whole book is written as a lyric form. It's a small 200-page book, and it's a captivating book. It's about his time living in Stanford. And, all those beautiful things that you all did when you were in the college years. I do have a lot of other books that I like.
Yeah.
Okay, but that one stands out. From a movie perspective, there's an old movie called Nayakan in Tamil.
Nice, Kamala Hassan.
Yes.
Yes.
So, to me, that was a management movie for me. So, a lot of my management skills come from that movie.
Oh, wow, okay.
He did good things too.
Not to scare people with good
There you go.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. And what else is that?
Art form, artist or art form.
And I do like a lot of music, violin music.
Violent music.
Violin.
Violent.
So there's an artist called Pratap Subrahmanyam. I really like him.
No relation to you, right?
No relation.
He's Subramani, he's not Subramanyam.
He's Subramanyam.
But you write M-A-N-I-A-Y, huh?
So, one last thing, what do you like to do for fun? Pratap?
Yeah,
You've talked about work, all that you do.
Hosting Q&As.
So, over time, I've changed what I do with my free time. Okay. Right now, I spend an enormous amount of time doing gardening. And
Gardening.
yes. So, to me, I am learning a lot from the plants. Let me put it that way. Growing them is actually not easy. You have to study them carefully and observe them. And there's a lot of relationship to soil management and things like that to actually writing code. And so I've learned a lot in the last year and a half because I've spent a considerable amount of time just thinking about that problem.
So there's soil management you can learn from coding, and there's people management you can learn from Megan.
Yeah, there's a book called Dirt to Soil, which I recommend. I think Apollo is probably familiar with this.
And both are silicon, by the way, soil and that's all silicon. That's awesome.
So now I think everybody that wanted to ask a question has asked a question. So you'd like to pick 2 people, 2 questions that...
Don't put me on the spot.
Right? You can take Girish's help, or...
I would rather you just...
No. Pratap, you pick.
No.
Yeah.
That's not right.
I like Naren's question, they were out of the normal. Everything else was going tech direction.
No, but I don't want to take the point.
He's not qualified, I'll take his prize.
You two guys, how about that?
Yeah. Who, can you...
Mrunal?
Mrunal and?
Suhas.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
You can come
I
and
picked the
accept your
youngest guys.
prizes.
I know. Yeah,
Please come up and get your prizes to Pratap.
I get the handout.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
And next Wednesday, we'll do the same thing again. Get your own, think of better questions.
Yeah, what I do, Pratap, thank you so much. Coming here, being candidly talking about it, taking the time to do this. We totally appreciate it. I think it's really useful for us, the entire community, now that you recorded this. Right? So thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was rather interesting when the title was Ask Me Anything. I didn't know what I was letting myself into. It's been fun.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Pratap, and thank you, Girish. Once more, I'd like to thank Rubrik for the facility and all of you for attending and being here.